Please sit according. Please adjust your sitting positions according to 7 meditative postures of Vairocana. And think, all sentient beings have been my mothers. All sentient beings have been my mothers, not just once, but for numberless times. All mother sentient beings are as kind as my mothers in this life. Even though all kind mother sentient beings want happiness and do not want even a small suffering. However, due to engaging wrongly in objects of adoptions and abandonment, they do not experience any happiness but suffering. In our minds, sincerely generate loving kindness towards all kind mother sentient beings, thinking, how nice it would be if all kind mother sentient beings were to have happiness, causes of happiness, that are virtues. May all kind mother sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. Or cause all kind mother sentient beings to have happiness and the causes of happiness. Lama, please bless me to be able to do so. Next, we generate compassions towards all suffering mother sentient beings, thinking, how nice it would be if the bodies of all suffering mother sentient beings were free from all classes discordant with accomplishing virtue, such as physical pain, sickness, and problems caused by 4 elements. May the bodies of all suffering mother sentient beings be free from all classes discordant with accomplishing virtue. Or free the bodies of all suffering mother sentient beings from all classes discordant with accomplishing virtue. Lama, please bless me to be able to do so.
어떻게 이제 누가 내 만든 거지 이제 왜 나도 타다 같은 거 조금만 더 지기 떠가면서 대신에 나타나는 지금 같은 무슨
How nice it would be if the minds of all suffering mother sentient beings were free from all classes discordant with accomplishing virtue, such as mental suffering, fear, and all coarse and subtle negative discursive thoughts. May the minds of all suffering mother sentient beings be free from all classes discordant with accomplishing virtue. Or free the minds of all suffering mother sentient beings from all classes discordant with accomplishing virtue. Lama, please bless me to be able to do so.
어떻게 이제 누가 이제 만드는 게 나도 지나서 같이 뭔가 타다 같은 거 좀 들어와서 저런다 저 지금 나타나는 시기가 무슨 무슨 거지
How nice it would be if the speech of all suffering mother sentient beings were free from all classes discordant with accomplishing virtue. All coarse and subtle negative speech, such as telling lies. May the speech of all suffering mother sentient beings be free from all classes discordant with accomplishing virtue. I'll free the speech of all suffering mother sentient beings from all classes discordant with accomplishing virtue. Lama, please bless me to be able to do so.
이제 누가 이제 만드는 거에서 이 샤워도가 여기 좀 타다 보면 좀만 정확히 다 좀 그렇게 나타나는 시기가 무슨
How nice it would be if the three doors of all suffering mother sentient beings were free from all classes discordant with accomplishing virtue. May the three doors of all suffering mother sentient beings be free from all classes discordant with accomplishing virtue. Or free the three doors of all suffering mother sentient beings from all classes discordant with accomplishing virtue. Lama, please bless me to be able to do so.
원래 시기보다 훨씬 눈에 지금 여기 와서 때문에 정말 지금 또 다시 다시는 나타나는 시기가 무슨 거지
How nice it would be if all mother sentient beings were free from all suffering and causes of suffering that are non-virtues. May all mother sentient beings be free from all suffering and the causes of suffering. Or free all mother sentient beings from all suffering and the causes of suffering. Lama, please bless me to be able to do so.
이제 누가 있나 시기가 코가 됐네 손도 들어가는 쓰다 보니 여러 보니까 내가 그냥 하다 보니까 무슨 건강 하다 보니까 쓰는 나가는 소리가 있는데 이제 통신 소리 공부하는 것이 찌르게 통과셔 그래서 내가 좀 있어야 돼.
Next, we generate bodhicitta. First, we ask ourselves, who should take on the responsibility to free all mother sentient beings from the sufferings of samsara and lower realms? I should take on the responsibility of mother sentient from the sufferings of samsara and lower realms. Even though I should take on the responsibility, I do not have the abilities to do so now. Who has such abilities? Those who have achieved perfectly complete enlightenment have the abilities to do so. Therefore, for the sake of all mother sentient beings, by all means, I will achieve the state of enlightenment.
Acredito, quando você se comporta com a chave, me sinto da bateria, quando me bateria de novo, eu vou te dizer, você vai ver, eu vou levar essa rotina de tempo, a gente se vai da gente inteiro, eu digo que você não vai te dizer, está fazendo a bateria, não precisa de isso.
Next, we generate all-encompassing yoga mind. The aspiring conventional bodhicitta that thinks, for the sake of all mother sentient beings, by all means, I will achieve the state of enlightenment. These transform into a perfect, complete mundis at one's heart. And the ultimate bodhicitta, that is, one's mind becoming one taste with emptiness, the lack of inherent existence, that transform into a white five-pronged vajra on top of the mundis.
Acredito, da como da gente mentira da vergonha, como da gente espiritual aí, sexo, também assim são muitos.
Next, we meditate on emptiness for a short while. That I do not exist intrinsically one with or intrinsically different from the aggregates. Thus, I am empty of intrinsic existence.
Estava falando de depois essa canção de Jesus Cristo que a gente sabe do que Jesus falou. Estava falando tão simples, nossa, não sei. E que tinha uma mensagem de como tinha eu digo essa política de estava tudo isso de eu acho que não tem tipo para tudo essa política é muito tipo vai lá. Eu tenho essa coisa de para Jesus.
As I always mention, it is very important and beneficial to conjoin the roots of virtue done by our three doors with the practice of six perfections. It's very important to conjoin the roots of virtue done through our three doors with the practice of six perfections. Thus, to conjoin these roots of virtue of listening, contemplating, and meditating on the Dharma with the practice of six perfections is as follows. The first one is generosity. The nature of generosity is an intentions of giving. These roots of virtue of listening, contemplating, and meditating on the Dharma is for the arising of happiness in sentient beings and for purifying the sufferings of all sentient beings.
那不好意思，自己我上班没去，他也上过这几月高头，你那今年吧，今年哪里按照也上过这个样，你在这边按照自己的没事。
Next is morality. The nature of morality is a mind of abandonment. When I contemplate and meditate on the Dharma, I will properly abandon my physical and verbal negativities so that they do not manifest in these 2 hours.
我手报来说，我们这个时候是我是蛮荣幸。我讲的也上过的几个个是女性，刚有的同业搞这种呢，就当做你水土的这样的学了一样。那第一个是也上过是学的在这，不是一个学的是有事。
Next is patience. The nature of patience is an undisturbed mind. When I listen to, contemplate and meditate on the Dharma, I will patiently accepting any physical or mental hardships that occur in these 2 hours.
我曾经说的，给我的意识的真正我什么东西，我没啥不是结果了，我的真正什么样？第一个是别的真的是
Next is joyous effort. Joyous effort is a mind that takes delight in virtue. I will delightfully put effort in listening, contemplating, and meditating on the Dharma.
我上帝说的，是给你把口了，自己的把你上帝说我什么东西，我是没啥不是几个个是，现在弄一个弄多的把忙多，我没啥不是几个别小的，现在把自己的地头很多，第一个是别在地方，上帝说的我是没事。
Next is meditative stabilization. The nature of meditative stabilization is a mind that single-pointedly focuses on any virtuous object. I will single-pointedly focus my mind on the intended activities of listening, contemplating, and meditating on the Dharma without being influenced by distractions and discursive thoughts.
我第一就是去了东西就是不得清楚我什么东西，我没啥不的经历过，去了太忙，太是吧。细节嘛，把这个是要细的出来了，我第一个是给他的，很细的给你是的。
The last one is wisdom. The nature of wisdom is an awareness that thoroughly distinguishes phenomena. I will properly and unmistakably understand the words and meanings of the teachings that I listen to, contemplate, and meditate on.
尤其是黑世界，他这个上帝我都在理解的，我觉得那个就比你这个黑世界的这个就是我们就是。
Set a good motivation. For the sake of all mother sentient beings, I will achieve the state of enlightenment. For this, I will listen to the commentary on Lam Rim teachings and practice accordingly in order to benefit sentient beings.
Thank you.
Thank you.
그래서 근데 동반이 되게 그래서 그거 말해. 내가 내가 앞에 손 동반이 되게 니도 좀 봐. 이제 하도 그때 가서야 그거 좀 지금 그래서 뭐만 계산해서
There's so many indeed that are
근데 그거 뭔가 말해. 그래서 진짜 써봐갈 그러니까 이제 이제 야 연대 그 진짜 많고 정말 쉽게 되니까 하도 지금 맞기 가자 볼래요. 하고 친구리스.
So at the beginning, when we set motivations, at one part we take some time to meditate on emptiness, right? So till now, I do not explain much in the meditations on emptiness. However, since we are learning a spiritual insight and we have learned about the object of negations in order to attain emptiness, so in the future, next year when we do meditations on emptiness, then I will turn on informations so that we will take a slightly longer time to meditate on emptiness.
等于我这么就唱的这里，当然说唱的阿七可是，我天气就没有的，我实在的我这里没有方面是那的可能，是吧？我一说我这没有的，我没什么去学是吧？
Today we are going to start from here, and here is under the outlines the imputed phenomenon person is asserted as the object of observation or the innate self-grasping or apprehensions of I. I'll repeat, the imputed phenomenon person is asserted as the object of observation of the innate apprehensions of I.
那这段我说讲这个当这个开始经经老残多啊，那进来上班等到第法国的话，我们每个就讲啥了，大家经历这段经历的讲啥的，这经历是可以，那的话，
참아도그만되시아니라 갈리송으로는 갈리송으로.
출사를 내가 지금 방금 지금 사실 방금 지금 되는 거 그래서 출사를 했어. 근데 상황이 됐다가 막 리뷰를 하고 그래서 같이 출사를 와.
So today we are going to talk about objects of observations of innate self-grasping, right? And previously, I also mentioned the definitions of self-graspings of person. So is when I teach, when we go, when I teach, then it's good to reflect on the definitions of self-graspings of person that we have learned about.
그래서 빌리 간다 말은 아주 뭐 되게 뭐 통찰다 간다. 그들이 내가 간다. 이 소바 간사기 다시 뭐 다시 하면서 그 사람이 다시 감정에서 인자를 다시 뭐 다시 또 다시 얘기지. 또 다시 통보를 때리 똑같이 나 있어야 돼. 나도 치 되지. 와. 다시다. 다시 감정 치워시. 와,当然这通过是大戏的，是大赛的戏，看你都是的戏，刚才没大赛的戏了呢，这个是吧？刚才是没大赛的，听到了开始通过，那通过了对你的大病啊，啥事？我就是那看不定，运气了是吧
방사가 되기로
？
하길래.
来就看到啊，
얘기를 하시는데. 맞아. So we are talking about the imputed phenomenon, and we are talking about the basis of imputation. So the imputed phenomenon is person, and the basis of imputation is aggregates. So when we say there is I imputed dependence on the aggregates. So I is imputed phenomenon, and aggregates is the basis of imputations. So basis on which the imputed phenomenon person is imputed on. Yeah, so when we say I there is imputed in dependence on aggregates, I is the imputed phenomenon, and aggregate is the basis of imputations. So basis of imputations also means that it is the basis on which person is imputed. So person, I are mutually inclusive.
我等到我说等到你开始忙工，等到他妈休的，是我变多了，不然这个东西长多啊，我这个等到休的话，打去看掉了的话，那不然你忙多长多啊，我再给他从那个大地把他写的嘛，看到继续等到他休的话，那地方就看到他大西通过的大西是这个嘛的，他大西大西是没接着的，大西通过的，他过去看啥是这个那个说法。Hello, Karwa, tapi kita tahu manis. Wah, itu luar lagi. Kalau sendiri coba ni kita ngasih ke coba ni kalau siapa ni, sendiri coba bijou. Orang sendiri coba macam mana? Wah, sendiri coba ni kita tinggal sih coba ni kalau siapa ni nak sendiri coba bijou ada tu tega mare. Coba korang macam manis. Wah, coba korang macam manis. coba sih. sopa chida sopa bisa kanda kansa ki dashi ya mato kansa maris ta tenda di shirwa sopa chida sopa kansa ki dashi ya mato kansa maris ta tenda di mashi.
So this paragraph is explaining explaining the meaning of this second verse, just as both speak of chariots based on collections of chariot parts. They conventionally say sentient being based on the aggregates of beings. This paragraph is explaining the meaning of this verse. So it says, the sutra passage is saying that the collections of aggregates is the basis of imputations of the person. So collections of aggregate is the basis of imputation of the person. So person is the imputed phenomenon. And it is not logical for the basis of imputation to be the imputed phenomenon. So the collections of aggregates must be understood as both the collections of the aggregates of a given moment and the collections of aggregates across earlier and later moments. So therefore, it is illogical to perceive the continuum of the collections of aggregates as the person. So the first sentence here is, it already says that collections of aggregates is the basis of imputation of the person, and person is the imputed phenomenon. So it is not logical for the basis of imputation to be the imputed person, which is person, to be the imputed phenomenon, which is person. So what it means is, uh, yeah. So aggregate is not person. Collections of aggregate is not person. Continuum of the collections of aggregates is not the persons as well. Now we're identifying the objects of observations of innate self-grasping, right? So collections of aggregate is not the person. Aggregate itself is not the person. Collections of aggregates is not the person. Uh, the, and as it says here, the collections of aggregates must be understood as both the collections of aggregates at a given moment and collections of aggregates across earlier and later moments. These two are not person posed as well. And also, it is not logical to see the continuum of the collections of aggregates as the person.
이제는 뭐지? 나도 이모만 뭐 배를 막 하는 거. 근데 저기가 더바다. 그래서 뭐 내가 아키리에 뭐 공사 플레이스. 그 공사 많이 무슨 주가 엄마 좀 지금 막 하는 거. 엄마 주가 막 하네. 그걸 공부해서 대시 공부해서 다만 예세. 한 노래 간다 또 소리야. 다 공부라 또니. 다 공부라 또니. 아, 나 소리야 배마도 와. 공부 소파다. 소지다. 공부 리파탄. 내가 yes. 정말 뭐와 뭐와 이거 대신 공부 이거 다 많이 쓰야 봐. 뭐도 맞이야 일마 저기 뭐
홍보 초바다. 아니, 홍보 초배 교인된 소 상황에 다시를 마도 다치 말어. 다시 간거 말어.
나 간섭이 같이 됐어. 그거 쓰야 봐. 나 공부를 때리 많이 쓰야 돼. 이게 다시 공부 이거를 공부 때리 이소 받으러 들어와. 이거를 공부 때리 있어. 이거를 다시 공부를 때리 예 다시 맞이 쓰는 거를 말고 이제 대신 공부 기사다. 그래서 좋아. 그래도 좀 강조와.
So entering the middle way says, the sutra say that since it depends on the aggregates, the mere collections of aggregates is not the self. So in entering the middle way, it says, sutra say, since it depends on the aggregates, so self is imputed in dependence on the aggregates. And the mere collections of aggregates is not the self. So mere collections of aggregates is not the self because it is the basis of imputation. Basis upon which the self is imputed, person is imputed.
어디 얼마나 가지 않아? 수업을 지방도 내가 얼마씩 가지 텔레비전도 따고 있어. 대신 거든 텔레비전도 준다는 거. 순전으로 이제 일단 다들 아마 텔레비전도 따고 있었는데 이 부모들 리소바데 공부 다 대가 있는 하세. 다 내가 엄마 끼우러 다 대가 있나? 그러면 공부를 시 뭐가 공부를 뭐시 다들 고사리 있어요. yes. 공부를 무엇이 와 다들 뭐에 대해서 예 수다 마이스다 공부다 있는 내가 수다 잘 들어와 수다 마이스 수다 마이보다 단도 지 수를 그래서 그러다 오늘 그거 지게만 맞아 봐봐 봐 예스 들어와 너 생각을 봐봐 맞네 봐봐 되게 얘기 알수 좋아.
And the teachers say the aggregates are the self. If that is why you perceive the aggregates as a self, he only refutes a self apart from the aggregates. For other sutra makes statements like form is not self. So the teacher said the aggregates are the self. If that is why you perceive the aggregates as a self, kasa di sumba di juji ye juba ye sumba de.
constitution dago this sumba dishi pungo dalo desu bole pungo dalo deba inase ne pungo ne pungo shida mo pungo ne mo tati de dalo pungo pa res yon pa res mo dalo pa res dago pa res su damo ina sumba pungo kida su damo ina su res
So the teacher said the aggregates are the self. That is why you perceive the aggregates as the self. It only refutes the self apart from the aggregates. So apart from the aggregates also means that it only refutes a self that is an entity other than the aggregates or different from the aggregates. So it only refutes a self that is a different entity from the aggregates. So for other sutra, make statements like form is not self. So therefore, even the statement, the view of I and mine by some ascetics or Brahmins is only a view of these five aggregates, refutes by means of the word only that a self with a different nature from the aggregates exists as the observed object of one's innate apprehension of I. So the meaning of this statement is it refutes the self that it's a different entity from the aggregates being the observed object of one's apprehensions of I. So the meaning of this is it refutes the self, which is a different entity from the aggregates, being the observed object of an innate apprehensions of I. So it refutes this being the observed object of apprehensions of I. So it refutes the self that is a different entity from the aggregates, being the observed object of one's apprehensions of I. So it refutes a self apart from the aggregates, being the observed object of one's innate apprehensions of I, and however is refuted when the aggregates are shown to not be the observed object of the apprehensions of an I. So in other words of saying this is aggregates itself is not the observed object of the apprehensions of an I as well. So this a self that is apart from the aggregates is not the observed object of an apprehensions of I. Similarly, aggregates are not the observed object of the apprehensions of an I as well. So here it says, however, that is refuted and the aggregates are shown to not be the observed object of the apprehensions of an eye. So, meaning, aggregates being the observed object of the apprehensions of an eye is already refuted. If they were, so if they were means that if aggregates were the observed object of the apprehension of an eye, that would contradict the statements in other sutras that the five aggregates are not the self. So other sutras says that aggregates are not the self. So if aggregates were the observed object of the apprehensions of an eye, this would contradict with the statements in other sutras saying that five aggregates are not the self.
那就那就最后好的领悟到，按照通过的俺自己个人多给的通过俺答应到的，包括的要完成的工作是，如果是的，当然俺自己你去哪里，你这个干部来是的嘛，那个发现的，俺去你哪里，你比如呢，这大不成，也是，但是通过了大不成嘛，也是，俺就那些你把它，哇，那么你哪里去，你哪里，你有理呢？ 但通过了呢，这个力气差不也是，对，你打差也是，不不过也是，是吧？我们去，但是你把的那把你讲，你把的那把你讲，你比这些呢，这打，这个啥样打起，
你被有得打小，
打差不多也是，你打的，打通过了没打，打些对象也是。
So the reason for that is that out of the two dimensions of the view of the transitory collection, the observed object and the aspect of the apprehensions of an eye, if the aggregates were the observed object, they would have to be perceived as the self. Therefore, the meaning of the sutra statement about a view of the aggregates must be explained as referring to the observations of the self is imputed to the aggregates. So, meaning the observed object of the apprehensions of an eye is self. The meaning is observed object of the apprehensions of an eye is the self. And how do you assert self? Self is the one that is imputed independence on the aggregates. Sorry. So the observed object of the apprehensions of an eye is self. So, and what is that self? Self is the one that is imputed independence on the aggregates.
很多俺这里就，那你就决定了，到的啥过的也是他工作，你呢，过了到说的也是他工作过了到是到可能是那个弄送点的话，都现在记得不清了送，如果现在不是也是，那工作了到说的，原来听过了到的到了你把写把的也是，听过了当年，听过了的到过是没马的也是。 都是的，是吧？这个，过了，过了那个到过是别马的也是，那我也是都这样告诉他，通过了大比大了，你不写把它写不出，我说，但是通过了店里大比大，别了你呢，看到，他的这个也是在这里，是吧？你大概也是当然这个对吧？但是通过了店里大，别了你呢，到了几个地方就这个困难这种的，还挺难记。 와, 아직 되게 다 공부하지. 다 차서와, 다 차서, 다 공부 좀 하서와. 어디 된다.
랑 이승이 주베, 미교로.
하는 중이고 따고요.
중교로.
그래서, 어디나. 나 동전 월다. 원래 뭐라 따와서 되는 제가 어디 된다 도도 쉬우다 지금 들어와.
랑쟁이 미바데 나레스 나레스 니디 그지디 풍부디 디나니디 미바데 차이로 디다 차이로 풍부디 미바디 미유디 차도 두나니 디다 풍부 바디 차이로 이니 딘디 마레스
난 있어 아주 못했어. 난 너무 수학 된다고 가서는 누가 보라 다 누가 또 하는지 된다데 이거 수학에 다시 풍부하게 따라 미래 그런 식으로 갖다 보면 예서 나중에 예서 나중에
Maintain to what it's in your.
어지게
So the observed object or objects of observations of the apprehensions of an I must be I itself, or must be self, must be the self. So because so there are many translations. Yeah, so apprehensions of an I or self-grasping, conceptions of I, grasping at the self. So those are the translation for these words. So apprehensions of an I, self-grasping, grasping at the self, and etc. So they are similar. They are the translation for these words. So self-grasping, the object of observation for self-grasping must be the self. So if the aggregates were the observed objects, then aggregates would have to be perceived as the self. However, aggregates is not the observed object of a self-grasping or the apprehensions of an I. So even though here it says that the Sutra words, it says only a view of these five aggregates. So what it means is these five aggregates are the observed object of uh, the view, the observed object, the apprehensions of an I. So, however, actual meaning is one should view the self is imputed uh, on the aggregates as as a as a uh, the object. Yeah. 그래서 난징기 미마이나 디 kumula mine tabi taro wa ila. 난징기 미마. Ini di kumula tini tabi taro. Yeah. So, observed object of the apprehensions of an I is the self that is imputed on the aggregates. Upon observing this self, these apprehensions of an I apprehends it as established by way of its own character. Okay, I repeat. The sutra words, it says only a view of these five aggregates. So what it means is the self that is imputed in dependence on the five aggregates is the observed object of the apprehensions of an I. So upon observing this self that is imputed in dependence on five aggregates, it apprehends it as established by way of its own character.
다시 풍부하게 따빙이나 그래서 대화를 했다. 다시 풍부하게 따빙아. 따빙아 이런 예스마 근데 뭐 초과다 이 진다 이거 같이 했어. 그래서 된다도 되거든. As I mentioned at the beginning of this lesson, we say that we are identifying the observed object of an apprehensions of an I, right? Of the apprehensions of an I. So while explaining these, then some sutras might say that literally it might say that aggregate is the self. The continuum of the collections of the aggregates is the self. So, however, even though it literally says that, however, they are not the observed object of the apprehensions of an I. So, what is the observed object of the apprehensions of an I? It is the self or I
that is imputed in dependence on the aggregates, which is a basis of the imputation. So even though Sutra says that aggregates is the self or the continuum of the continuums of the collections of the aggregates is the self. So even though in Sutra it might literally says that, however, you should understand that doesn't mean it that way. So it is not the observed object of the apprehensions of an I. So the actual meaning of these words in Sutra is the self or I that is imputed on the aggregates, the basis of imputation, is the observed object of the apprehensions of an I.
那就刚才俺第六个的到了，下午热的那么这里嘛，这把他的心呢，那这话的人讲说，他你有没到的，他你没到的，你有，也是这个心，是吧？大说的了，大说的了，他你有没到的，他你没到的，那他没到上来，那等你七八行，那等你七八毛钱的这个。
Yeah. So since we are talking about self or I, so they are a division. There are two kinds of self. So a self that exists conventionally, and there is a self or I that do not exist even conventionally. So we must identify or understand the difference between these two selves.
那我这边，他你的有没到的，没没到，他你的没没到说的，我说哪里，我下个大说，你的他不的，他你的没没到说的，大下个大，是吧？大下个大。
So the self that do not exist conventionally is the self which is an object of negations. So usually when we say the self, it can be divided into two: self that exists conventionally, a self that do not exist conventionally. So the self that do not exist conventionally is the self which is an object of negation, or is a self to be negated.
那他你的有没到说的，他你的有没到说的，按照俺上的，叫我们的对问题的起码嘛，我给的，俺上这的效果，俺上，哦，叫我们的对问题的起码这个数据上来呀，人家我给的，他你有没到，你来，他你有没到，我对他你有没到，也是，当然是也没给历史发展，发啥的，俺这这个点超越了哇，我到底他你有没到，
Shasade. So the self that exists conventionally is the mere I. So the self that exists conventionally is the mere I. So the mere I that comes from the past, and the mere I that goes to the future, and eventually reach the state of enlightenment. And mere I is also the place. There is also the place where. Yeah, it's also a place. It's also a place upon which the imprints of virtue and non-virtue deposited. The mere I is also the place upon which the imprints of virtue and non-virtues are deposited.
到底嘛，到底可以调来我个去了。你心啊，做了大的些个，看你要吧，这个的，这个看你要不大的嘛，说你学吧，那个给把大家场上的，那就我心吧，没给他没给。到底俺长了大的些个，看你要吧，对你俺长说的，他倒是我了，他比俺长在这里他不大，但是我给大的俺的，俺没把这里他们的话，但是我给大的俺长的。 That's the you have done. That patient could do what they.
So that is why you should distinguish between statements that the mere I referred to as self that exists conventionally. This is one part. So mere I is the self that exists conventionally, right? So it is the observed object of the apprehensions of an I. So another way of saying this is the mere I imputed in dependence on the basis of imputation, which is aggregates. So that mere I is the observed object of an apprehension of it, is the apprehensions of an I.
Là, tu vois, quand ça, dans l'île, tu peux le faire de chez moi, quand c'est bien, c'est une petite chez moi. Maintenant, quand j'ai le temps de chez moi, quand j'ai le temps de quand ça, dans l'île, tu peux pas là. Et quand j'ai le temps, c'est quand j'ai le temps de prendre une minute à voir, prendre une minute à faire. Là, tu vas chez moi.
And statements that an inherently established person, also referred to as self, does not exist even conventionally. So there is another kind of self that do not exist conventionally. So the self that do not exist conventionally is the self to be negated. For example, established person. Another way of saying this is the person that exists inherently. So this person or this self or this I is the self that do not exist conventionally. So we must differentiate between the two kind of selves.
我感觉轮不来看的，刚才个大说的，他那个要把这个头嘛，他那个要不要弄完？还是他的多的，他的好过我的什么多啊？反正轮不来看的，刚才个大说他那个要嘛，还是你对对看的，刚才希望年纪的，对，这个就是属于有的，也是刚才希望年纪多，年纪的，那这个就是的，刚才希望的不要不的，没有不习惯的，刚才个他们都要个差，有的人都差不多，这是问题。 강사 세월이 아버지 뉴스 듣고 있나 오늘 강사가 다음에 뭐야 돼 오늘 예 저희도 그래서 다시 도와 다시 때 강사 세월의 뉴스만 또 다음에 도와내 라
강사기 다야나데 강사데 야봉을 순와이나로 강사
뭐 강사도 뇌야 부 있었으나 약간다 강사 다 해봐도 니로들 피해 다시 쉬게 됐어
So still, you should not say that this system asserts the self of persons to be conventionally existent. So such an identification of person is a distinctive feature of this unsurpassed system. So if one properly identified person, then this identification is the method to which one realizes the meaning of selflessness of person. So if one properly identified person, then that is the method to realize the meaning of selflessness of person. 루디 강사기 다 탄이도 요바 유지 미자오 강사기 다갑디 니랑시기 두에다 바르베
강사들
루디 강사기 다 탄이도 요바 유지 미자오
강사서 단이 요 말이 가샤다 예스
가샤다로
가샤다 예스 와서 근데 강사기 다서 그게 뭐 말이지 와 가샤다 예스
맞아 So you should not say that this system asserts the self of person to be conventionally existent. So self of persons refer to the self to be negated, the object of negation self. The self which is an object of negation. So just now I mentioned there are two kinds of self, right? And then you shouldn't say that this system asserts the self of person to be conventionally existent. So it refers to the self that do not exist conventionally, which is the self to be negated. That's what
this.
This.
对，这两个是去咱们电脑吧，对了，俺在港上上新那个电脑吧，他俺要上新那个电脑吧，别的电脑港上这么大的钱是实际上路啊，他实际当过的俺说港上上新那个，俺上新那个电脑吧，对的，真的，他港上上新那个别买新的，他这个都听过多，港上上新那个买新的，你是他得真的是对的。
So determining them to not exist inherently, this has 3 points. Determining that the I does not exist, does not inherently exist. Determining that mind does not inherently exist. and showing how persons appear like illusions in dependence on that. So the first sub-outline is determining that the I or person does not inherently exist.
딱 나로 안 치니 거 뛰는 오바들 간다. 아 니시 차이 거는 때 간다가 담에 때 따와 치도 그래. 니시고데 아야 뭐 시바이나 때는 간다 담에 또 비려 와. 니시도 뭐 오늘 저 정말 뭐 이제 되는 참 좋아.
So the first of four essential So the first of four essential points with regard to this is to examine one's own mind stream so as to identify the manner of branding a self of persons. So regarding these four essential points, if one understands well these four essential points, one will be able to realize the meaning of selflessness of person.
아무 니시도 뭐 비치저리 뭐 라샤 니시 아무 니 뭐 좋아. 라샤 니시. 예. 이거는 니시 니가 somebody did 데뷔 기자들이 니시 somebody 데뷔 기자들이 니 그 시거데 데뷔 때도 니시 시거데 와 시거데 데뷔 때도 니시 다 니시 보데 니시 땅아 내가 친구 되는 거 간다 이거 간다 다음에 또 알다 좀 간다 내가 친구 되는 거 아니고
So what are these four essential points? So these four essential points, the first one is the point, yeah. So the point that ascertaining the object of negations, the points of ascertaining the object of negation. The second one is the point ascertaining the certainty of the privation. The third one, the point ascertaining that it is the point ascertaining the absence of truly existent one. The point of ascertaining ascertaining the absence of truly existent one. And the fourth one is the points of ascertaining the absence of truly existent many. I repeat, these four essential points are points of ascertaining the object negation, points of ascertaining the certainty of the privation, and the third one is points of ascertaining the absence of truly existent one, and the last one is point of ascertaining absence of truly existent many.
아니 시고도만 내시 적으니까 이제 저를 보고 해. 나 근데 저거 말이 간다 아니 시고 카페 자는 것도 괜찮. 그때 그러면 나도 대 시고 니 시고 대 단다지 시작이나 그 간다 그 다음에 또 알아. 까방아 뭐 말해서 나 봐라. 까방아 뭐 또 그래서 까방 제가 그 제목 그래서 내요. 간다 그 단다지 시작이 내가 저 간다 지를 뭐 먹어 봐. 다음에 또 그래서 와. 나도 그 친구니까 뭐 lemana ngato adikado tsang de dik chance ni shigo da so to lo kuna ni shigo de a kona disigo de yare da de kanda lo ma to ina da de tsang de ngato shasa de ge chenbu ji ga kes mo ba la amani jinda tombo chobe da da de nga ka tu de ni ga no chenbu ji ga tu yu sang sa da ni sin de sha shi da mo se de ma ka tu de yin go de yin wa de ma na.
So this is a brief introduction of what these four essential points are. So, and there are many great scholars say that if you understand well these four essential points, it doesn't take you long to realize the meaning of selflessness. So if you understand these four essential points well, those great scholars even say that it doesn't take you 5 minutes to realize the meaning of selflessness. So it means that you will be able to realize the meaning of selflessness in a very short time. So this is where I'm going to stop. And next year, I'm going to start from here. And then please keep this in your mind. So first class next year, we are going to talk about very important points, which is called 4 essential points. So please keep this in your mind. And then if you're able, if can, then you can read you can read here and then to understand what these 4 essential points refer to. And if you're unable to understand it or read it, then you just keep in your mind that first class next year, we are going to talk about a very important points that if you understand it well, you'll be able to understand the meaning of selflessness.
because我做很多很多的第三多啥的时候啊，第三多参就对了你就是我的开始所谓那个被那个全部发现不是吧？那个全部都你的这种啊，不是那么第所谓的那么怎么看上最主要的话，我在你讲的这个那个不大一样，而且很多很多那你主要开始说对全部说啊，就是说，我就是你说的对方呢，那个就是这种的话，我就说你讲的嘛，要不我就说。
Okay, so we have covered some parts of special insight. This covers some parts of the chapter on special insight, and I will make a quiz on this. However much that we have covered, then I will make a quiz on this, and it will cover many important points regarding special insight. Then I will send it to you as soon as possible. Yeah, so you have any question? I will stop here and it's question and answer. If you have any question.
Ken, just to confirm the fourth point of the four essential point. The fourth one, the point ascertaining absence of fully existent many. Is it?
Truly existent many. Truly.
Oh, truly existent many. M-A-N-Y.
Many, one and many.
Okay.
So the third one is one, right? And the fourth one is many.
Okay, correct.
Mm.
The third one is the point ascertaining.
The absence of truly existent one, the absence of truly existent many, yeah. The absence of.
The absence, okay. Okay,
points
thank
of
you.
ascertaining the absence of truly existent one. And the last one is points of ascertaining the absence of truly existent many.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, Geshe-la. I may like to ask two questions. Okay, my first question is how the mere I become the depositor of the virtuous and non-virtuous activities that carry life to life. Okay, and then my second question is there are two ways of imputation of the I. Sometimes it's 5 aggregates, sometimes it's 6 elements. So what is the reason for these two bases of imputation of the I? Thank you.
The second question is why these are the basis of imputations of I?
Yes, why there are two way, sometimes using 6 elements, sometimes using 5 aggregates. Yes.
Thank you. Yani di yo tangbo di tangi di nga tsam sa di gemi gi bhasha gi shasa ro. Ani di kandi di nga tsam gemi gi bhasha di chai re sa. Gemi gi bhasha gi shasa kandi chai re sa. Yo tangbo di. Ani di juan yiwa di ani nga gi dashi di yo ro. Nga gi dashi ni di dashi pongbo. Ani tsam tsam la yang dashi di kaza Jung 6 element Jungwa Tru. Jungwa Shiora. Come true. Yeah, sometimes 6. Yeah, come true. Ashi ini di come true. La yang sometimes yang segi ores. Ini yang kariji ni yang di kata tang ni yo ba. Come true. Da.
엄마 단조하게 나서 이거 엄마는 막 심한 거기 당어서 나서서 들으시고 나와 그래서 막 왕사를 쓰시는 나서 무슨 데에도 엄마 단조와 저기 저런 이거 그러니까 엄마 비서이나 그 강다게 쓰기 이런 힘들어 그냥 비서기 쓰기 무슨 데에 뭐 생각만이나 의미가 있어요. 그래서 좀 와. 그래서 엄마 단조하게 나서 막 지와 엄마는 인데 막 심한 그 인기는 산지 살 바에 농계는 나상 저들이 딱 맞아 세워 되는 거죠. 이들의 뒷tem보스가 나다 뒤들다 이 먹이 빠져서니 간디나 이들의 샤사리 시디 비레스.
네, 나서 인데 뒷tempo 요래.
뒷tem보라 다 건동게 들어와. 한 누가 누구요? 한 누가 누구 말이야. 아, 선디 시작하다 뭘 하다. 와. 다들 누워있다. 와타가다 소라고 해. 나서 이렇게 해서 뭐 그런 거. kan 우리 시대로 와. 그러고도 야게 도바들이 그냥 나도 때에 연락 좀 마시고가리 나시스와 치료와 나도 바샤가서 진노히 신이 치료와 다들 나도 단조하고 내가 바샤고도 시 이제 딜러 그래. 내가 바샤고도 시 나도 파도 바샤고서 시대 한 나장서 딜 해서
내가 기 바자 곳이.
와 나도 때에 연락 좀 시오리 때에 연락 좀 시오리야 바샤고도 시대 나시 때에 들려고 와. 스마나기 때에 들려고 와.
남시로.
관광지로 왔다. 뭐 많이 바뀌었 대니가 내서 내가 여기 보는 게 샤스 보면 와.
머리 바자는 남시로.
샤스 보면 와. 근데 시에 너무 단조하게 돼. 넘치게. 이제 바샤고 비시에 뭐도 나도 바샤고서 더 뛴다고 하잖아. 그래서
내가 기 바자 곳이.
내가 바샤고 비시에 했어. 어디처럼 이거 야구 같은 데 들어와. 어디 가서 나장서 그 스머디 살아 거기 예 콜. 안다.
나서 인데 타도 기 바자기 그게 시다 버려. 되리나.
바쳐고서 이시도 타도 바쳐고서 이시도 어디래.
나자면 타도 기 바자.
어디다 바자 되리. 다시 산지 살아 로기 되리. 그 바쳐 조금만 이제 뒤에도 바쳐 잡으니 다 바쳐 나오는 거야. 그래. 내가 차요 말이. 하긴 와서 그거 말이.
바자 라이 뭐. 얘 교화 쪽, 얘 교화 쪽이 말이. 나담 세트.
야. 내가 상상을 여봐 상상 내가 정 말했어. 저는 또 바쳐 나오는 거야.
교화 당보로 와요. So regarding your first questions, how the mere I become the depositor of virtue and non-virtues that carries through life to life. So, how say we learn in the tenets that different schools they assert differently. So some assert the mental consciousness is the basis of deposit, basis of deposit, basis upon which the virtue and non-virtues, the imprints of virtue and non-virtues are deposits, and then some assert the mind basis of all is the basis upon which the imprints of virtue and non-virtues deposits. However, for Prasangika, mere I is the basis upon which the imprints of virtues and non-virtues deposits. So that so the mere I is the one that comes from the past. They came from the past, and the one that go to the future to the state of enlightenment. So this mere I is not subject to changes, meaning that it doesn't exist sometimes, or it exists sometimes, it doesn't exist sometimes. So it doesn't is not subject to changes like this. So it is the basis upon which the imprints deposits. Yeah. So, and because of this, since it is not subject to changes, therefore the imprints that we have accumulated will not go wasted. So, even though you may think from the aspect of 12 links of dependent arising, and then the first link is ignorance, the second one is a compositional factor, and the third one is consciousness. And when we explain from the aspects of 12 links of dependent arising, that consciousness is the basis upon which imprints of virtue and non-virtues deposits, right? So that is the basis upon which imprints deposits. However, it is a temporary basis. Temporary basis upon which imprints of virtue and non-virtue deposits. The ultimate basis upon which imprints of virtue and non-virtue deposit is the mere I.
그래서 도니버도 들어오는데스. 맞아요. 공부하고 다시 공부를 이게 답이 나서우리. 그런다 지구 컴퓨터 비비시스와데 공부를 대가로 한다. 참아.
풍봉아.
뭐 대가랑 참되고 참되었을 때 맞아 컴 주셔야 돼 맞아 풍보라 참 내리고 풍보라 참이 좋아
풍봉아 sẽ thì này cái tham thuần từ yang cũng chạy.
참되고 별 기도 다시 풍보나 나 셀로디 가다 나리나 다시 시행가 강도 참아 때 아들 나세 전화로 드리는 거です예 이거 누구요 됐어 와 어제라 일 됐어
So even though sometimes one may say, at some context it says that independence on 5 aggregates, and then in some context it says independence on 6 elements, and the I is included. However, you must understand that these 5 aggregates includes 6 elements already. These 5 aggregates already includes 6 elements. So these list down the 6 elements. Come to the categories. Yeah. So what are these 6 elements? These 6 elements are earth, water, fire, wind, consciousness, and space. So these are 6 elements. So these 5 aggregates already includes 6 elements in it. So whether it says 5 aggregates or whether it says 6 elements, it doesn't become contradictory. Yeah, so these 6 elements are the earth, water, fire, wind, space, and consciousness. So when it says I that is imputed independence on 5 aggregates, so then you must understand that it depends on the collections of 6 elements as well.
Okay. Can I clarify something? On the mere I actually is an imputed object. So how does it able to store those virtuous and non-virtuous activities or imprint? I mean, it is just an imputed figure only. I mean, can Geshe please clarify? Yeah.
Geshe di ngan sang wena di kat ke mi ge ge pa cha ki sha sa ro ge ni di Geshe an ji ji ge pa ge Chinese. Ni yang kan di sha ji yu da ni di ngan sam sha de ta chu zam ro. Ta chu rang ro. Ta chu rang yin na yang ka sa di ge mi ge ge pa sha sa kan di cha tu ge. Tu ge yu na.
저 탄주어 이거 와서 저도 당연히 상비살이야 로그데 와서 저도 맞아 나시서도 강사 캐리고 뭐 탄주 탄주 이지 나시서도 강사真的 캐리고 이지 나시서
이시에나데 강사 캐링
강사 캐리고 뭐 이시서 강사 캐리고 좀 단지 벌써 그때 상비살한 거에 이지 강사 지역에 강사 이지 제바 이 강사 캐리는 거였어 이지 제바 강사 이지 제바 들리 강사 레스 이 사람 사람도 그래 바샤 데이팅을 찾아내 아다 노래에서 온다 한다. 나 단조하기 때문에 이 시에바서 강사 요 말했어. 강사 요 말했어.
이시에나데 강사 말했어.
강사 말했어. 스치 사람도 강사게 하게 돈이 이 시에바서 요 말했어. 산지 사람도 그래 와상지 마도 근데 강사 이 나시 강사 레슨 지켜내고
강사 가르레스 나잠베로.
다시 그거는 근데 나상 세워지 나 대두게 이따 간다 진취받아 삼삼을 여봐 삼삼을 내가 자원이 자요 말이지
네 다시 폼볼라 테니 나잠세 데 이게 상기 공연데
삼에서 됐어 간다
yeah so mere I yeah so Svadatika Madhyamika they assert there is a mental consciousness the mental consciousness is the person rangyuba na de yishi na de kangsa res
세시 이치나시 간다 세시 샤워
이 남시로 kangsa res
간다를 때 바샤찬 그래서 그래서 세자 바이는 이치나시데 데이팅의 바샤된 비그레 때 간다 해서
yeah sorry. So Svadhantika Madhyamikas assert mental consciousness is the person, and that is the basis upon which imprints are deposited, and that is the one that goes to the state of enlightenment. However, Prasangika do not assert mental consciousness as person. So what is asserted by Prasangika as person is the mere I. So the mere I is the one that is imputed independence on the aggregates. The mere I that is imputed independence on the five aggregates. So that mere I is asserted as the person, and it is the one that came from the past that goes to the future and eventually go to the state of enlightenment. The mere I is the person, is asserted as person.
그냥 깔락쇼요.
나점이나 강사로
나도 그때 나타나서 어디 가서 들키지 뉴스야라 깔리 요리 사티다. 그 뉴스에 때 가다가 다음에 내가 쉬고 그래서
나점이는 다출이 강사니야 다출로 아니 풍부를 때니 나베 나점 써야 돼. 다출이스. Yeah. Yeah, so it's quite difficult to identify this mere I. So so the mere I so mere I is the one that is imputed imputed on the aggregates. The mere I is the one that is imputed on the aggregates. So this mere I is the person that goes to the state of enlightenment. Yeah. So mere I is the imputed phenomenon that is imputed on the five aggregates, which is the basis of imputation, right? So this mere I is the person. Mere I, person, is the same. So it is the one that goes to the state of enlightenment.
I'm sorry. Okay, I just understand is what I understand is mere I is an imputations object. It's just like sky flower. So how does that able to store all those imprints? Is an imputation objects mere I. Of course, I understand mere I is the person, but mere I is imputed on the five aggregates. So it's not like others, like mind basis or they have the mind or the consciousness, mental consciousness to store those imprints. So how does this mere I, that is something by conceptual, is the conceptual something like sky flower, how does it able to store those imprints? Yeah, that's my questions. Thanks.
Yes. La kongi samsui na ta chue sa de. Ta chue na de lui da ba ma do. Pena cha shana nam ke me do. Nam ke me do ne de ta chue res. 其实ngã점 sa de yang ta chue na yang kaza ngã점 ina de yang ta chue res. Ini yang ngã점 de ta chue na ini de pa cha ge sha sa de kan de cha tu res.
근데 다치다 다시 뒤쳐봐 쉬우니 다시는 공부에 다시 라자니 내가 답에 나한테 다치에서 그게 쉬워요. 나 진짜 나중에 다치 이게 좀 말다. 이게 좀 말다 다치. 나도 다시다 다치에서 와. 공부에 다시 라자 다사게 시대 공부 전에 내가 시대라 때는 답에 나서去다치 차워요.
나서 대去답에
去차워요. 공부 들라더니 근데 다치다 다시서 우리 실질을 파자는 시험을 하면 저당 가서 공부 세워야 가서 우리 취취 세워야 공부 세워야 저 제발 시기는 공부기 또도 해야죠 취취를 치료와 공부 그런 이 제기로와 제기로와 근데 신다 봐더니 그저 말이
이니디 남게 매도 이나 데이터 추를
그래서 다치스나 간다 남게 매도 최고로 나와 나는 매도 최고로 나와
이니디 로이 파다와리 마도 이니 단 다추 차려 와스 좀 삼주이나 남게 매도 이나 다추리스
근데 남게 매도 맞아
오리스
남게 매도 또 나가서 최고 나와 최고 나와 남게 매도 너 다셔오라 너 다셔오라 너 다요라 강사서 와서 왜 니스키 다시 공부를 하는데 답은 나지 이거를 쓰고라 내가 말와 나게 내도 써다 가서 너 따바자래 마도 또 나도 따바자래 마도 왜 니스키 이거 말와
Yeah, so when how say this imputed phenomenon is not like in this context is not like the sky flower that is imputed by a conceptual thoughts. So it's not something that you conceptually created or something. So this sky flower is a phenomenon that is superimposed. It doesn't even exist conventionally. Here, the imputed phenomenon that we are talking right now is the mere I, or is the person that is imputed in dependence on 5 aggregates. And this mere I, or this person, in general, this imputed phenomenon exists. So it's unlike the sky flower that, that in thought is the same, thought the same. So it's not the same. So this imputed phenomenon means that I or person is the phenomenon that is imputed on the aggregates. So this I or this person, so we are identified I, what is self, what is person, right? And then this is the phenomenon that is imputed. So what is self? What is self? What is person? What is I? So it is the phenomenon that is imputed in dependence on the 5 aggregates.
같은 것도 이제 신다가 말래 그랬다 제발 그랬어 신다 연합 소바들이 신다 아주 까바네 예 그래서 대단한 거 페이지를 잡으라 다시 공부를 하면나 제발 제일 저거 페이지가 리리스 그거 페이지를 단위 상황 비슷 거다처럼 있어
So in future, we are going to use the example of a chariot to understand that a chariot is imputed on its parts and something. So we are going to talk about it in as a next year. So then it might helps you to understand better what does it mean by the imputed phenomenon and the basis of imputation. 남김이 또 있는 따추를 베스트 뭐.
피부로 뭐라냐
So we say imputed, and this sky flower that you mentioned just now is not even a phenomena. Yeah, it's not even a phenomenon.
So can we say in ordinary language, not Dharma language, that the mere I is actually Xiao, a person who physically exists, but his basis of apprehension is a mere I. It's a mere Xiao.
Xiao is the
a physical person who actually exists physically, but his basis of apprehension is a mere Xiao, which is a mere person, mere I. This is putting it into simple language, not Dharma language. He physically exists, conventionally he exists, physically he exists, but he exists as a mere person, as a mere Xiao. Is that correct?
기lang so di nga zam kasa nga zam sa de ro ngone chi diang so pege de la wai na nga sa de nga zam res ya na xiao sa de ki cha ting ro jwa dang ye jwa dang yin xiao sa de nga zam res de pong bo la de ne da be xiao res de ne lam na de ro yan de tan ye du yo be tan ye du yo be tan ye du yo be xiao tan ye du yo be他也对有被扛杀得着啊是so de nga sa de ni de so ta ba de nga zi yo ro
와서 제시가 제시가 쇼라 난 와라 우리 지지 나한테 제시가 와 나이 제시 나이 제시 나한테 나이 제시 와 나이 제시 나한테 강사 내가 되래 강사는 나보다 이렇게 시작 진도가 편히 이렇게 시작 나 제일 이렇게 시작 편히 이렇게 시작
아니 제자안에 대 배니나한테 가사대 나sam비 천시다 원래 차로 아니도 요배 강사 수이나에 대 나sam비 천시의 차레스 yeah so basically in an ordinary ordinary language, basically, because now we're identifying as this mere I. So what is, we are talking about I, the one that exists conventionally, I that eats and etc. So this is the one that we are identifying. So this cell is an illustration of a mere I. Pen is an illustration of a mere I. Yeah. So basically, this you can see that cell that conventionally exists is an illustration of mere I. So in conventional way of saying this is Ken is a person. So when we search for the Ken, so is Ken exist here in the body, this part of the body or that part of the body, then that is the difficult part. When we search for search for the Ken. So where does it exist? Then that is the difficult part. So in general, we say that Ken is a person. But when we search for Ken, then that becomes difficult. Yeah, so identifying I or identifying a person, it becomes difficult. It becomes difficult because even though in conventionally way we say that I, person, and etc. However, when we actually search for person, that becomes difficult. And these we will talk about it again and again in main class. And regarding this, we are going to debate about it. So and then which is good for us to understand. What does it mean by I? What does it mean by person? What is the I?
Sorry, Ken. Can I ask a question? From what I understand about Xiao question is, his concern is this imprint of virtuous and non-virtuous imprint deposited where? From what we know is the mental continuum that has no beginning and has no ending. That's where the virtuous and non-virtuous imprint is deposited from life after life. Until we take a rebirth as an ordinary being, we come back. That's where the form and the mind and body take place, But if you expire, when you die, it's the mental continuum that travels from life after life. That's where all the virtuous and non-virtuous imprints are carried along in this mental continuum.
其實你哋工業心雖然啦，其實來緊消極潮啊，結果啦，你哋 Caroline 嘅心雖然啦，意思啲你哋可能啲嗰麼你容易我哋人節嘛，人第三個意思啦，容易我哋，你啲拖呢，人啊啲啦，你啲幾米幾出啲差嘅我哋，都會係啲。
你现在罗的都会有的希望，罗的都会的，我说团结的刚才肯定有，我说团结的刚才，刚才说的，你现在刚才肯定有嘛，刚才肯定有嘛，
你现在的生意啥了都会有的，你的刚才肯定有嘛，
你去把的刚才真的肯定有嘛，刚才说的俺上去嘛都，你去把的刚才肯定有嘛。那等到让这个的知道我们真在天里面没有的时候，
抗杀被天里有，
抗杀天里有，
以前那啲生意啥啦都有的，抗杀都天里有嘛， So for Prasangika, mental consciousness is the one that mental consciousness it goes to the state of enlightenment. However, mental consciousness is not asserted by Prasangika as person. Yeah.
And
Oh,
can
yes.
Can I-
Yeah.
can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So far we have explained, just like explained so far, that conventionally, the conventional existence, sorry, I don't have to put this question, put it the other way. The object of negation, right, is the non-truly, not the object of negation is that the I or phenomena does not exist by way of its own characteristics. In other words, not inherently existent. So you are actually negating that it doesn't exist in that manner. But by virtue of having established that you have negated that it doesn't exist in that manner, does not necessarily prove that you have attained the emptiness, which is the ultimate truth. So using a conventional method, I find it a bit difficult to understand how you can translate into the absolute truth. That everything is empty other than from the Tantric point of view, the Vajrayana point of view. That's why the other day when I asked that Sutrayana is insufficient, it's because of this question that I had in my mind. How do you translate a non-conventional manner of using intellectual understanding to establish the non-existence of an I or phenomena and establish an absolute truth? Because you are using conventional method to establish an ultimate method, which I find that it's a bit difficult to understand. Can it be difficult to achieve? So can you explain that? It's a bit
Sorry,
difficult
yes.
to put it there. The
So,
conventional, how do you use a conventional truth to establish an absolute truth, which is emptiness? So basically that's what it means, lah. Because you are saying that it doesn't exist by way of you are negating it. Having negated it doesn't prove that you have attained the absolute emptiness. That's what I'm trying to say. Having negated the non-existence of by way of its own characteristics does not necessarily lead you to say that you have understood emptiness, because emptiness is the absolute truth. That's what I'm trying to aim at. So far we've explained conventionally using reasoning, using arguments, but you come to a conclusion that you are negating the true existence of an I or the phenomena, but that doesn't necessarily lead you to understand the absolute truth. That's what I'm trying to say. So that's why I'm trying to say that this method, this conventional method, doesn't lead you to enlightenment. It's difficult, isn't it?
I try to translate Geshe-la, what I understand of your questions. Then Geshe-la空嘅心雖然啦，多地空嘅條啊多地，翻譯嘅塔式，翻譯嘅塔式嘅，啲團堂點話多吐埋嚟，
是，
人啦空嘅心雖，空嘅自然嘅打面就俾翻譯我哋，翻譯嘅點，其實啲工作點話，工作點俾嘅嗰年。團堂點吧多吐埋嚟。工作點俾嗰年，團堂點吧啲多吐埋嚟。呢空嘅心雖然啦，我做其實啲人先做吧，那啲人先嘅做吧，啲家呢團堂點吧啲嘢吧啲多吐埋嚟曬，然後啲嘢吧啲多吧啲點吐埋嚟，呢心數，但是呢。就啲等到日本托年呢啲人嘅生意做埋啲假嘅喎，呢啲単意工作嘅點吧，然後啲單意嘅出現嘅，單意嘅出現曬啲工業三歲呢啲工作點吧嚟，啲日本點做呢啲工作點吧嚟，呢啲工作點吧啲大嘅托年，然後啲嗰年，嗰點吧啲多吐埋嚟，工業三歲呢。人嘅生意做吧， 대 간에 전당 덴바 동만이 대 또바 대 덴도이 말했어. 예바 대 덴도이 말했어. 야나 또 그와 말했어. 당이 지
Another way of put, sorry.
Yeah. Yes, yeah, please.
Another way I'm trying to put it more straightforward is that when Yeshua says the mere eye goes to reverse and eventually attains enlightenment, what I'm saying is the mere eye is conventional. How do you attain enlightenment which is absolute? That's a simple way of putting it.
Mere eye is conventional.
The
How
mere
does
eye is
this?
conventional. How does it attain enlightenment, which is absolute, which is absolute truth, which is emptiness? That's what I'm trying to say. That putting all my words together is coming to that, you know. The mere eye goes into reverse is a conventional thing. It's an absolute, it's a relative truth. How can it be crossed over? Kate paragate. How can it cross over into absolute truth? There must be something more to it, is what I'm trying to say. There must be something more to it to cross over. Just by mere realizing that things do not exist inherently from its own side or by way of its own characteristics does not necessarily cross the line. That's what I'm trying to ask.
Ini di kasa ngazam sati kunju temaris. Ngazam sati kunju temaris. Ngazam ina di kisla tangi suma nang si ini di sangi sala tu bioro. Sangi gi sa ya na jangju sati tunang temaris. Sangi gi sa tunang temaris. Ini di ngazam ina kunju temaris. Ini di kunju temba di jibo la tene kandi 전단 때마다 또 투게스 제상은이 디 공기 지와이나 나점 군주 템바 디 지불라 때네 전단 템바 데또 투게요 마레스 야나 디 강라 양 지는베 겨야레 마도 디 지불라 때네 군주 템바 나점 군주 템바 디 지불라 때네 전단 템바 상계기 살라 데또 투마 데또 투 마레스
네, 대화를
아래 지시격인데
다음 이제는 뭐 한다고 말해. 대화를 했으니까 그래서 리바 몽부지가 되어서 내가도 봤더니 리바 몽부지가 그래. 너네 전화 왜 인기스 깔에 가고 열어서 리바 몽부지가 된 데다 되면 또 그래서 리바 몽부지가 또 그래서
이제 대화 대표시한 대화
대화를 시간이 what's master 대화를 하는 거지.
ini di ngazam ina di kunju temba rebe. Ini di ngazam di la tene di sangi isa di tenang temba di kutu minas. Ini di sangi isa ina di tenang temba rebe. Sangi isa sa di ana jangju sa di dongmani rebe. Sangi isa sa di tenang temba rebe sangi labi omaro.
그래서 상지시 투지시 패턴이 제가 참마를 비로와 주례되나 그래서 대가되면 많이 나오라 투지시 한테 인지 여러 안심이 희비저다 맞아 주례에서 이나 된다되면 그래서 야 상지 법이지지 어디서야 된다된 말에 주례 인가です 그래서 전지적으로 된다된 바 이게다 이게가요
상이 그게 고대나
어디서 전주를 해서 된다된 말이 인가です 그 상지 법이 투지지 한지 준비 시적으로 이 전주를 된다된 말이스 어디가 인간이 지금이 그래서
ini di kasa di kunju temba ngazam kunju temba de la tene de jibo la tene sangi sala ro tu yo mares de kasa de rangi sengi
이건 엔드 된거 다다 히르니까라 때문에 상지 사람도 그래서 뭐가 나서 타 군도 되고 지고라 때문에 또 말해 대다 되고 지고라 때문에 또 말해 다시니 야 맞다기 전에 예 상지 사람도 그래서
yeah. So what you say is correct. So when we say mere eye, the conventional truth or the relative truth that goes to the state of enlightenment. So this mere eye is a conventional truth, And by understanding that this mere I do not exist by way of its own character itself, does not lead you to the state of enlightenment, because I say you have to conjoin the method and wisdom together. So by the union of method and wisdom, it leads you to the state of enlightenment. So, and when we say enlightenment, enlightenment. So enlightenment does not is not necessarily ultimate truth. When we say enlightenment, enlightenment is not necessarily ultimate truth. For example, this truth cessation in the mind stream of a Buddha, it is an enlightenment and it is an ultimate truth. However, wisdom that the exalted wisdom, the omniscience itself is an enlightenment. However, is not an ultimate truth.
Thank you. I know. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
My question here is that when we study tenet, the self-sufficient substantial existence self is labeled as cause selflessness of person. And also when we study in tenet, in the chart 8, it show object of abandonment. It show that cause afflictive obscuration for Prasangika Madhyamika system is the self-grasping of self-sufficient substantial existence self, together with the seeds. This we study in tenet.
The object of abandonment,
which include the table show object of abandonment. There are two, afflictive obscuration or obscuration to liberation, and obscuration to omniscience. So we study in tenet that afflictive obscuration is divided into cause and subtle, and for Prasangika's Madhyamika system, the cause afflictive obscuration is defined as conception of self-grasping on the self-sufficient substantial existence self and attachment and their seeds. This in the text. So my question is, since self-sufficient substantially existent person, this awareness about SSSE person is both selflessness of self of person and also afflictive obscuration. It is the afflictive ignorance in Prasangika system.
it is an afflictive obscuration.
Ignorance.
Ignorance.
We come to middle length Lamrim.
Afflictive ignorance.
We study about afflictive ignorance in middle length Lamrim chapter 22. And when we talk about afflictive ignorance, the focus in middle length Lamrim text is on self-grasping of person more toward the view of facilitatory collection. It hardly mentioned SSSE in this text. So it comes to my understanding is in tenet, there's some emphasis on this SSSE, which is very cause. Still Prasangika system mentioned SSSE, but come to Tsongkhapa, middle length Lamrim, when talk about self-grasping of person, which is afflictive obscuration, isn't it? Is afflictive self-grasping of person is a type of afflictive obscuration, right? So it's not mentioned as SSE so much, or not mentioned now in the text. I'm just wondering whether this awareness, my question now is, this awareness of self-sufficient substantial existent person, this awareness is in Prasangika system, is it afflictive obscuration? Is it an important afflictive obscuration?
Afflictive obscuration.
Yeah, if it is so, we understand that the quiet affliction is, if it is so, the second question is, SSSE is an afflictive obscuration in Prasangika system. We understand that in the chart of Prasangika system, one eliminate all quiet affliction at the point when one thoroughly realize emptiness at the starting point of path of seeing.
The starting
The
point.
quiet It's part of seeing. The acquire one, the one that you learn from other system, Bible, with God, the soul. Strictly. At that point, same simultaneous thought. But for innate affliction, such as the awareness of the self-substantial, self-sufficient, substantially established person, when is it eliminated along after the part of seeing and to the part of meditation? There are many grounds. When is this affliction, afflicted ignorance, being eliminated for Pasangika system? So in conclusion, my question is, SSE obscuration for Pasangika system? And if it is so, since it is a obscuration, it has to be eliminated along the way. Does it eliminated even in earlier part before part of seeing, or at part of seeing just like the quiet one, or along the path? And if it is so, does it eliminate slowly, like the inherent existence is eliminated slowly until the eighth ground, right? It is gradually being eliminated. What I understand from Sheila teaching is innate afflicted obscuration is eliminated by end of seventh ground. So it's eliminated along the various ground until the seventh ground. But how about this SSE? Awareness of this SSE or self-grasping of this SSE. See, if it's accepted by Pasangika system as afflicted obscuration, when is it eliminated?
Thank you, Elula. The Kangsa Rangetu be Zeogi, to be Kazatuba Zimbe, Lo de, the Pasang, thank you, Elula, anything in your race. Thank you, Elula, anything Kangsa Rangetu be Zeo, Kangsa Rangetu be Zeo, to Zimbe Lo de, and your race. Anything, Yundi rebes, Atiwa Tamboti, Yundi rebes, Yundi Vina, anything, Kaza Lam Kandu, the Pangiris.
This is what the country of India, this is what the Mazuma Chibi want the Shibaina. And it is Tonani, so you come on watching. But Chibu wants it, but Chibu, you get Tonani watching this, watching this. Teenage want the Shina? Yeah, teenage Tonani watching.
Teaching Temingi Gonglam.
This Tona. Then Tona Tracy, which you are dedicated to what typically share it. Teenage Tona, Tona choosing and go to do this. Teaching that Tona chooses. He love machine, one of them.
Teaching it Tonglam ne go to a race, and it attending
that teaching Jana, the Tagala, Tona, and you go to the that said Jeba to the need one. Yes. Said Jeba to the need one. Yes. Now, timid one channel, timid Tona and go to the timid Dutch in the combat of the need one. Yes.
Ajumiko.
What Dutch in the combat of the timid Dutch in the combat of the need one. Yes. What the other? Over go to the Tona, you got Chibaji. Chilasa Jebane need one. Yes. Timid that in the combat of the combat.
Design it is Rimjian to the one the Pangiro.
The Ponta de la Mandra and Dabra.
The teaching it Tonglam ne the Shawana de Saki Bato Kapsu, anything you did the Pangiro. Only the Saki Bakasu, the Kataranga to be Zeo to Zimbe Lo de the Pangiro.
Don't you contact on the Ponta? When you do so, the contact don't cheat on the Nidu. When you Ponta, they don't need you on Ponta.
Yeah.
Most your mark, you do not need to Ponta.
Teaching it Tonglam ne, Panga de go to, and it is not Kibati, Levikasu, and it and you did the Pangiris. Yeah, so this, so the awareness that apprehends a self-sufficient, substantially existent person in Prasangika system, so it is an afflictive obscurations. So it's, one starts to abandon it from the path of seeing. So in the Mahayana context, one starts to abandon it from the path of seeing. So when one reach eighth ground, all afflictive obscurations are abandoned. Yeah, even in the Hinayana context, so one starts to abandon afflictive obscurations from the path of sin, and when one attain the arhatship, then one the state of arhat, then one abandons all afflictive obscurations.
So there's also this grasping a true existence
Grasping a true existence
of self and phenomena.
Mhm.
Which one being abandoned first? Is this SSE, the expression abandoned first, or that inert afflictive expression that holding on I as inherent existence being abandoned? Are they simultaneously abandoned, or one will be abandoned earlier than
true existence. Tempa tu kansa tempa tu ba jimbe benzin de any de kansa ranga tu be je tu jimbe lo de kangi nguen la pangiris. yang tingjian do ina de yang tu che.
이게 계세요 말했어. 이제 계세요 말해가 네가 니트 누구랬어. 강사 대버트 버티다 하나 강사 이제 서랍 버렸어. 안다 나한테 그 대버트 반 이제 그것도 제가 전혀 니트 누구 했어. 그 카모리스. 그래서 앉아도 이제 또 짐바서 때라 버렸어.
Ini di pangi tu che ina de yang kaza de nga chi ke ba yo ro nyam tu.
이 하고 그랬어.
Dema tu ba simba de ni de amo inele ni de ranga tu be je tu simbe lo de ni de ra pa inele ni de pang be ta la ni de ni la tu ji la nyam tu pang res. They think you will Yeah, so even though grasping a true existence in Prasangika system is regarded as subtle and grasping a self-sufficient, substantially existent person is regarded as coarse one. However, when they are abandoned together at the same time. Huh? Do you have any other questions?
내가 잘못다 대신 로사죠.
现代呢有那么就好。
나 그게 실습 so much small 와 이게 쉬어있어. 나 타마 무티니 뭐 봐라. 로사발라 무티니 다가나 어머니 로조나로치스 베데 주체보 대가나 하신나로치스 그때 때가 있어.
Yeah, thank you very much. And then, this is last class of the year. So I encourage all of you, to continue to put in great effort, in coming years. So just like, in coming years. So I encourage all of you to continue your great effort in coming years.
진짜 담보는 곳이라고 하는지라. 진짜 진짜 담보 들어와. 세식 진짜 담보는 진짜 곳 그랬어. sama yaga 들어와.
So the first class next year will be in January. So and then we'll see you then.
Yeah.
So
Thanksgiving mandala now.
yeah. Thanksgiving mandala so we offer Thanksgiving mandala now.
We also, on behalf of all the students, Kishila and Ken, translator, we want to thank you for all this many preparation for the class to make us understand. And because it's not easy, I'm sure Kishila and Ken spend many hours that we do not know on this paper and Sally help in the review class. So we want to thank from the bottom of our heart this teacher of us to all of you, Sally, Ken, and Kishila.
Thì Loma 참마기 참 전에 느끼실라라 데이터가 기규다 아니 데 셀리라 아니 딩 타와니 지나 수기스 단신나 그냥 쪽에 차네 아니 대한 주주다 아니 대한 준바시고 가자 된류와 가자 배주연 시부터 전에 아니 낭조의 하고의 제도 아니 데 배주연다 아니 데 주주 뭐当송스 인 타와니 지나 수기스. Thank you. And so we recite thanks the mandala offering prayer.
뭐라고? 그래서 뭐 뭐지? 나가는 이거 로직 한다. 그래서 이거 완전히 어찌 된 거지 뭐 도와줘. 그래서 좀 되게 다 맞아서 저는 지금 생각도 좀 그래서 이게 이제 쉬고 이제 봐도 그런 거는 나까지 가봐야 돼. 되게 너무 서로는 것이 우리 사람으로서 tempo non pienso che non la dico c'è una città da non da lì di la macchina mi hanno saputo fare con da quando deva e dice e io di città alla giornata ci ho fatto una buona idea e sono fatto da lì sempre da c'è poi da mi si che ora ci non ho devo c'è sunga da un bambino calino insomma ora di deva dici qui sotto della vita sulle scioglie non che deve in carina fa 세링이 dici qui sotto di fuori dato sangue chiude dopo insomma tutto non c'è di 마지막 그 대화도 그리고 진짜로 너무 좀 시기 대화인데 뭔가 그때 그러면 이제 처음하고 제대로 한번 제대로 나리 듣고나 봤으니 그거가 디지 그러면 어떻게 되게 단단한 그런 거 되게 이거를 제가 이제 뭐지
So we conclude with dedications. We dedicate the roots of virtue that we have accumulated, especially the merits that we have accumulated in this year. So maybe the complete cause for Buddha Dharma to flourish and for all sentient beings to experience excellent happiness. We also dedicate these roots of virtue to all upholders of Buddha's teaching, mainly His Holiness the Dalai Lama, to live eons long, have excellent health, and may all their holy wishes and enlightened activities be accomplished instantaneously and be spread in all 10 directions. We also dedicate these roots of virtue to our beloved teacher, Gradual Lama Rinpoche, endowed with great kindnesses. So may Rinpoche's holy wishes be accomplished instantaneously, and may unmistaken reincarnations of Rinpoche be swiftly returned and continue to turn the wheel of Dharma for the sake of all sentient beings and for the sake of teachings, so that we will have the opportunity to receive the precious teachings from you again, Rinpoche. We also dedicate these roots of virtue to the world peace, and may excellent happiness prevail in the world. May wars, conflicts, diseases, pandemic, disaster, natural disaster be pacified immediately. And we also dedicate these roots of virtue in general to all sentient beings, in particular to Malaysians, and in particular to LDs, to whoever have Dharma connections with OTC, to all of you, to you, to your family members, to your friends, to your relatives, and etc. So may you live long, good health, and may your life be filled with excellent happiness. And may your excellent happiness be grow more and more.
A good photo.
Sabeki wadi tendang ruwa kun la kampen dang kiba jisun lo sang traba yi tenpe jimbo rindu se ji shu Senjo Rinpoche ma ke panang ke kyuji ke ba nyamba me ba yang kone kondo pe wa jo jampe ba we jida ken pa dang kondo sambo de yang de shin de kira kage jeso da lo je ke wa di da dang je ra do ho tong yi wa Rinpoche ma ke panang ke kyuji ke ba nyamba me ba kone kondo pe wa jo rime ta wa Rinpoche ma ke panang ke kyuji ke ba nyamba wa yang kone kondo pe wa jo Teachers go to Bella, teachers as a content and China, people that take so last so this social go show and they bend them on the back and they do with some in no country to make it take out so and this other share the door show. Not just any around so low and Gawa and secret budget on Joshi carry about the bed. And then want to make it so you also to be to take a coach, you don't to be to the wall. I am to be go judge to be to Lama so what they 마는 중에 고지 고디에 대담아 저조와 이타가 지도 전반적인 노포벌 시와시 대신 시와 원도 저도 저도 신하라 대신한 게 두개 라고 제루에 대양 조사배 중 계사 제대로 교시 어나다의 고의 신간대 벤당대와 마들 중에 내체에서 왔던 생각도 비슷한 시대 파도 인지